I smell a roast.
Does it smell like love?
It does smell like love.
What does love
so-
smell like? Ooh, let me tell you.
Baby, don't hurt me. Yes, it is that time of year. We are almost at the time of February, in the middle there, where everybody celebrates that holiday, Valentine's Day.
Are you celebrating it, Jeff?
Probably. But this is part 1 of 2. There's so much about Valentine's Day. I'm splitting this between this week's roast and next week's roast.
There's not enough roast for all this hate, so we're spreading it across.
This week, we're going to talk a little bit about the origin of Valentine's Day, because we all know the Hallmark holiday it has turned into. Buy a bunch of chocolates and hearts and give them to a loved one. And when you're in elementary school, all the weird little Valentines that you clip out of magazines and you give to all your friends and all this other stuff.
Wait, what about is this some 1920 shit again? What are you clipping out of magazines and giving to people, Jeff?
I don't know. Whatever.
You can't tell me because you just made it up.
No, they used to have sheets of Valentines, like Snoopy or something, and they would come as a sheet in a magazine.
Oh,
and then you'd cut them all out and you'd get 12 to a sheet.
The little cards.
Yeah, and it would say to and from, and you'd write them out and you'd hand them to all your friends and stuff. The origins of this holiday, though, are a lot darker and probably a lot more bloody than you actually think.
I'm suddenly into it.
First up, the deity that is synonymous with Valentine's Day is that, obviously, of Cupid. In classical mythology, Cupid is the god of desire, erotic love, attraction, and affection. And most notably, in modern times, has been associated with Valentine's Day, even though Cupid existed way before this was ever even a thing.
Right.
He is often portrayed as the son of the love goddess Venus and the war god Mars. He is also known in Latin as Amor, which actually means love. His Greek counterpart is Eros, and although Eros is generally portrayed as a slender, winged youth in classical Greek art, during the Hellenistic period, he was increasingly portrayed as a chubby boy or cherub. That's where we got that from. And during this time is when he had the iconography of his bow and arrow, and if you got shot by his arrow, you would then desire whatever Cupid wanted you to desire. That was his power over you kind of thing. He was never really the main character in any kind of story. In classical mythology, he was always
he just showed up, did his thing.
Yeah, he was always manipulated by somebody. Like Venus would be like, Cupid, go do this, or Hades would be like, Cupid, do this for me, and so it was he was like that kind of thing. So, but then he got kind of roped into this whole holiday around love. But the holiday of Valentine's Day has its roots in ancient Rome. From February 13th to the 15th, the Romans celebrated the Feast of Lupercalia. The men would sacrifice a goat and a dog and then whip women with the hides of the animals they'd just slain. Now, ancient times were different times, and women would actually line up in the town square to be whipped by these freshly slain hides by the men, because the belief would be that by being whipped by these hides, that would make them more fertile, and they would then give their husbands sons.
Did it work?
I don't know. Sure? Maybe? I don't know. The actual reason is because the emperor at the time didn't want his army to get married and settled down. He wanted them to remain warriors. So he created this feast where basically it would pair men and women off, and they'd have a couple days of debauchery and lovemaking and get it out of their system, and then they'd go back to war.
So it was a way to keep on breeding but not have to tie your warriors down.
Right.
Interesting.
There was also, during this time, a matchmaking lottery where men would pick women's names out of a jar, and then they would be coupled for the rest of the festival. Sometimes this coupling would last. Sometimes they would actually be husband and wife after the fact.
Sounds kind of fun, except for the whipping part. It's a little weird.
Kind of weird. Emperor Claudius II actually executed two men, both named Valentine, on February 14th in different years in the 3rd century during this festival. Their martyrdom was actually honored later on by the Catholic Church with the celebration of St. Valentine's Day. Later, Pope Gelasius I actually screwed things up in the 5th century by combining St. Valentine's Day with the Roman feast of Lupercalia to expel these pagan rituals, but basically made it this, whereas the Catholic Church was trying to get it away from the hedonistic and the, the crazy sex-filled, festival, this Pope kind of merged the two and brought that back to the forefront. So he kind of muddled things up again a little bit. But made it fun for everybody, I guess.
No whippings, but,
Yeah. As the years went on, the holiday grew sweeter. Both very celebrated authors, Chaucer and Shakespeare, romanticized the holiday in their work. Also, the idea of love. And handmade paper cards actually became the tokens du jour in the Middle Ages. And then eventually this made its way to the New World. And the Industrial Revolution ushered in factory-made cards in the 19th century, and then by 1913, a small company from Kansas City, Missouri called Hallmark Cards gained popularity by producing these Valentines for the February holiday.
So Hallmark's bread and butter was Valentine's.
Bread and butter.
That makes
Today,
sense.
it is a lot of bread and butter.
Yeah.
According to market research, just last year, Valentine's Day sales reached $17.6 billion and projected to reach over $18.5 billion this year.
That's a lot of growth.
That is a lot of growth.
That's pretty intense.
And that is the commercialization, not just cards, but the gift buying and receiving, commercialization that we've got, the chocolate industry, the candy industry, all of that all together. But one of the most famous things surrounding Valentine's Day has nothing to do with love, and that is the Valentine's Day Massacre.
Well, it could be the love of killing.
Could be the love of killing. Do you know about the Valentine's
I don't. I'm very
Day
excited to learn about
Massacre?
This. I'm tucking in, Jeff.
Very, very famous because it deals, and I do apologize for the graphic nature of this
Don't worry. The
thing,
photos are so bad you could never tell.
but it deals with one of the bloodiest and greatest turf wars between mobsters back in the day that happened around Valentine's Day. 4 men dressed as police officers enter gangster Bugs Moran's headquarters at North Clark Street in Chicago. They lined 7 of Moran's henchmen against the wall and shoot them to death. The St. Valentine's Day Massacre, as it is now called, was the culmination of this war between Bugs Moran and his rival, Al Capone. George Bugs Moran, or Bugsy, was a career criminal who ran the North Side Gang in Chicago during the bootlegging era in the 1920s, and he fought bitterly with Al Capone, who was known as Scarface. So if you've ever heard these terms, Bugsy or Scarface, that's these two guys. They were real guys. They were vying for control of this smuggling and traffic operations in Chicago. At that time, when Prohibition happened, the country thought we're going to do right by doing Prohibition.
We're going to clean things up.
It made it so worse, and that's why it only lasted a year. But during that year, these gang wars escalated tenfold because the amount of money you could make was incredible.
I mean, it's not like you're going to make drinking illegal and everybody's just going to stop drinking. They're going to find ways to do it, and criminals will find ways to give it to you.
Yeah. So
and instead of, businesses making money, gangsters make money.
Exactly.
That's usually how it goes with Prohibition.
Exactly. Throughout the 1920s, both survived several attempted murders. On one notorious occasion, Moran and his associates drove 6 cars past a hotel in Cicero, Illinois, where Capone and his associates were having lunch and showered the building with more than 1,000 bullets.
And he lived, huh?
And he lived.
God damn.
A $50,000 bounty on Capone's head was the final straw for the gangster. He ordered that Moran's gang be destroyed. On February 14th, a delivery of bootleg whiskey was expected at Moran's headquarters, but Moran was late and happened to see police officers entering his establishment. Moran waited outside, thinking that his gunmen inside were being arrested in a raid. However, the disguised assassins were actually killing the 7 men inside. So Moran, again, escaped being assassinated right there.
Just because he was late.
Just because he was late.
That's Capone right there, right?
This is Capone, yes. This is Bugsy Moran. The murdered men included Moran's best killers, Frank and Pete Gusenberg. Reportedly, this is my favorite part about this story, reportedly, Frank was still alive when the real police officers appeared on the scene. When asked who shot him, the mortally wounded Gusenberg kept his code of silence, responding, "No one. Nobody shot me," and then died. Literally dying from multiple gunshot wounds. Still never became a stool pigeon.
Wow.
Never ratted out anybody. That's the code of being a gangster right there.
That's intense.
That's intense. The St. Valentine's Day Massacre actually proved to be the last confrontation for both Capone and Moran. Capone was jailed in 1931, and Moran lost so many important men that he could no longer control his territory. On the 7th anniversary of this massacre, Jack Mcgurn, one of the Valentine's Day hitmen, killed him in a crowded bowling alley with a burst of machine gun fire. McGurn's killer remains unidentified, but it was likely Moran, though he was never charged with the murder. Moran was relegated to small-time robberies until he was sent to jail in 1946, and he died in federal prison of lung cancer in 1957. And famously, Al Capone went to jail on a technicality. They got him on tax evasion.
Yeah.
Which is nuts.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Like, one of the craziest, most successful gangsters out there, and he just didn't pay his taxes enough. Crazy. And that has a lot to do with Valentine's Day, which is nuts.
So how do we celebrate Valentine's Day now that we know this, Jeff?
I don't know, watch an awesome gangster movie maybe?
Ooh, I like that.
There's
I
some
like
really
that.
good ones out
Which
there.
one would you suggest?
Oh, man, I don't even, you know what? I don't know. There's some really good ones out there about Capone and Bugsy Moran.
There is some good ones.
I can't think of one off the top of my head that I would say over another one. I would say type in some good ones because you know what? Everybody's going to want to watch some lovey-dovey romantic comedy on Valentine's Day or whatever.
Screw that.
Why not watch a gangster movie on Valentine's Day?
Why not just binge Boardwalk Empire?
Ooh, good one.
Thanks.
Good one. I like that.
Reading all this and listening to all this reminds me of exactly Boardwalk Empire.
They drew a lot from this.
They portrayed it quite well because,
Yeah.
I mean, stuff like this happens all the time in that show. It's a very fun show. And
Yeah.
I suggest you watch it on Valentine's Day.
Yeah, so, that's a little bit of the history and the bloody, dark origins surrounding the holiday of Valentine's Day. And next week, we'll be back with part 2 of this roast, talking about Valentine's Day all over the world.
I can't wait.